He was born into a mansion filled with gold, marble floors, private doctors, and endless luxury, yet he carried a pain no money could erase. Ethan, the only son of the millionaire Hamilton family, had never known what it meant to walk. Since birth, his legs had been lifeless, his wheelchair the prison that followed him everywhere. His father, Mr. Hamilton, spared no expense flying in world-famous doctors, therapists, and specialists from across the globe. But despite millions spent, no treatment gave Ethan the gift of movement. The boy grew up watching the world from windows, watching children play in the garden outside, running, chasing each other, laughing, while he sat with silent tears, whispering to himself that wealth meant nothing if he could not take a single step. His mother was gone, having passed when he was only 6, and his father drowned himself in work to hide the grief. Ethan was left with nurses, tutors, and therapists who treated him like a patient rather than a boy. Deep down, what he craved wasn't medicine but the feeling of being alive, of being part of the world outside his gilded cage. His life felt colorless, each day blending into the next, until one morning something strange caught his eyes from the wide mansion window. Down on the street, while the neighborhood was still waking up, a garbage truck rolled by. Out jumped a man whose presence filled the street like music. Marcus, a black garbage collector, moved with rhythm in everything he did. He whistled, he sang, he spun bags of trash like they were part of a performance. He was poor, dressed in a uniform stained by work, yet he had a smile that lit up the air more than the chandeliers in Ethan's house. Ethan stared at him curiously, wondering how a man with nothing could radiate such joy. Day after day, Ethan waited for that same hour, just to watch Marcus work. Soon, the man noticed the boy watching from above. Instead of ignoring it, Marcus waved, then broke into playful dance moves with his broom, pretending it was a microphone. Ethan burst into laughter, the kind of laughter his nurse hadn't heard in months. The small connection grew. Marcus made it a habit. Whenever he passed the mansion, he'd do a little jig, a silly spin, or a clap routine, all for Ethan. The boy's eyes would sparkle, and for a few minutes each morning, his loneliness disappeared. Ethan found himself waking earlier, eagerly waiting by the window, desperate not to miss Marcus's show. For the first time, there was something to look forward to, someone who made him feel noticed. One morning, Marcus took a bold step. He approached the gate and called out gently, "Hey, young man. You enjoy watching, huh?" Ethan nodded shyly, his voice small but sincere. "You make the world less boring." That short exchange began an unlikely friendship. Whenever Marcus had a break, he'd chat with Ethan through the gate, telling stories about his life, about how hard it was growing up in poverty, about how dance was the only way he fought sadness. "Life will always throw garbage at you," Marcus said, grinning. "But if you dance through it, you come out clean." Ethan admired his spirit. How could someone surrounded by trash carry so much joy? But not everyone approved. Mr. Hamilton soon noticed his son's growing attachment to the garbage man. He frowned at the sight, feeling it beneath the dignity of his household. One evening, he scolded Ethan, You don't need silly distractions. You need doctors, treatments, real solutions." Ethan snapped back, his voice trembling but strong. "Doctors never made me laugh, Father." He did. It was the first time Ethan ever raised his voice, and the words cut deep. Despite his father's disapproval, Ethan and Marcus grew closer. Marcus began encouraging Ethan to try small movements with his upper body, clapping to rhythms, tapping his fingers to imaginary beats. They made it fun, not therapy but play. Ethan laughed until his cheeks hurt, something no medical session had ever achieved. Marcus told him, "Don't think about walking yet. Just feel the music. Feel alive." Soon Ethan was swaying in his chair, clapping in time, pretending to dance from the waist up. His spirit began to change. The boy who once drowned in sadness now wore hope like a crown. One day, after weeks of playful practice, Ethan confessed something. "Sometimes at night, I feel tingles in my legs, like they want to move." His father dismissed it when told, calling it false hope. But Marcus leaned in, his eyes shining. "That's your body waking up. Don't stop now." They pushed harder. Ethan tapped his toes to beats, stretched his legs with Marcus cheering beside him. Each small twitch felt like a miracle. Then it happened. On a bright morning, as music played from Marcus's old radio, Ethan concentrated harder than ever, sweat dripping down his forehead. Suddenly, one of his feet jerked forward. A gasp escaped his lips. The nurse, who had been watching silently, covered her mouth in shock. Marcus clapped and shouted with joy. Ethan felt tears welling up, not from sadness, but from the spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, his story wasn't over. But the celebration was cut short. Mr. Hamilton walked in and saw Marcus holding Ethan's hands, guiding him through tiny movements. His face turned red with anger. "Enough of this nonsense," he thundered. "You're filling my son's head with dreams that will never come true." His voice echoed through the mansion like thunder. Ethan, with trembling voice and tears in his eyes, cried out, "Maybe dreams are the only thing keeping me alive." The room fell into silence, the words hanging heavy in the air. And in that moment, the battle wasn't just about therapy or dance. It was about hope versus fear, love versus pride, life versus survival. Ethan had chosen his side, and nothing would ever be the same again. The house was silent after Ethan's cry, the silence of a boy who had finally spoken his truth. Mr. Hamilton, shaken but too proud to admit it, walked away, but the echo of Ethan's words stayed with him like a shadow. That night, for the first time in years, the hardened millionaire stood at the door of his son's room, watching him sleep. Ethan's face looked peaceful, even fragile, and Hamilton whispered words he'd never spoken aloud, apologies he didn't know how to give. Deep inside, he carried guilt, believing his wealth could fix anything, yet here was proof that money couldn't mend his son's broken spirit. Marcus returned the next morning, unsure if he would be allowed near. But Ethan was waiting eagerly by the window, eyes shining, determined not to let fear or anger stop him. Marcus smiled, lifted his hands, and the rhythm returned between them as if nothing had happened. "Every beat is a chance," Marcus reminded him. "Every clap is one step closer." And Ethan, with more fire than ever before, threw himself into their routine. He tapped, he stretched, he fought against the chains of his body, fueled not by medicine but by music. Each day was a battle. Some days his legs responded, tiny jerks of life, and other days they felt like stone. He cried, he fell forward, he lost patience. But Marcus was always there with the same words. "Every fall is part of the dance. Get up, boy. Try again." Ethan grew stronger in spirit, his laughter returning louder than his tears. He was no longer just a boy in a chair. He was a boy with a dream, and that dream gave him power. Unseen by them, Mr. Hamilton began to watch from a distance. He stood in the hallway, quietly observing his son tremble as he tried to push himself upward, Marcus by his side clapping, cheering, never letting him give up. At first Hamilton's pride resisted, but the sight cracked something inside him. For the first time, he didn't see disability, he saw courage. He saw his son living, not surviving. And in that moment, his walls of pride began to fall. Weeks passed, and Ethan grew bolder. He wanted to surprise his father, to prove that what Marcus gave him was real. He practiced harder, enduring pain with a grin. Finally, the chance came during a family gathering at the mansion. Relatives filled the room, servants moved around, and Mr. Hamilton stood proudly at the center as if presenting his perfect world. But Ethan had other plans. With Marcus standing quietly in the background, Ethan placed his hands on the arms of his chair and whispered to himself, "Now." Slowly, painfully, his body shook, his legs wobbled, but with sheer will he rose to his feet. Gasps filled the room, people froze, and Mr. Hamilton dropped his glass in shock. Ethan stood trembling, sweat running down his face, but his eyes were brighter than ever. "I'm not broken anymore," he whispered, voice cracking yet firm. In that instant, his father's heart shattered. The man who once measured everything in wealth fell to his knees and embraced his son, tears streaming freely. The room was silent except for the sobs of a father who had finally understood what truly mattered. He turned to Marcus, his voice breaking. "You gave my son what money couldn't buy. You gave him courage." Marcus shook his head humbly. "No, sir. The courage was already there. All I did was help him hear the rhythm inside. From that day forward, everything changed. Mr. Hamilton opened his doors, not just for Ethan, but for others like him. Inspired by his son, he funded programs for disabled children, creating spaces where they could find joy, freedom, and hope. He invited Marcus to lead what he called dance therapy, though Marcus never used the word therapy. To him, it was life. It was about reminding kids that movement wasn't about perfection, it was about expression. Ethan became the heart of it all. He practiced every morning, slowly taking steps, stumbling, but laughing with each fall. And then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. With Marcus at his side and music filling the hall, Ethan began his first true dance. His movements were shaky, awkward, far from graceful, but they were his. Each step was a declaration that he had risen above despair. People clapped, some cried, and Marcus danced beside him, making every misstep look like part of the rhythm. For Ethan, it was never about showing off. It was about freedom. For the first time, he wasn't watching life pass by. He was part of it, moving to the beat of his own courage. He looked at his father, who was clapping with tears on his cheeks, and smiled through his exhaustion. The boy who once thought he had no future was now the boy who lit up a room. Mr. Hamilton, humbled and changed, no longer hid behind wealth. He began to live through love, grateful to Marcus for teaching him what no fortune ever could. He told Ethan one night, holding his hand, "Son, I spent years trying to buy you legs, when what you needed was wings." Ethan replied softly, "I always had them, Father. Marcus just showed me how to fly." And so their lives intertwined, three men from different worlds, united by rhythm, courage, and the power of hope. Ethan was no longer defined by his wheelchair, Marcus was no longer just a garbage man, and Hamilton was no longer just a millionaire. They were a family rebuilt by love and movement. Ethan's voice closed the chapter in words that would never leave those who heard them. "I thought my life ended before it began. But sometimes, the person who carries your garbage is the same person who carries your dreams. Money built me walls, but a garbage man taught me how to dance." The story didn't end with steps, but with a dance that belonged to them all, a dance of freedom, forgiveness, and new beginnings.